All right. So, Jorge, give us the 30-second version. Who are you and what does margins do?
All right. Well, hi, Sky. Thank you for having me. My name is Jorge, and I'm the co-founder of Margins. Margins is a company that works with fruit and vegetable companies discover new production regions around the world. Effectively, these companies are under pressure, like climate has made that some of their staple regions are not a fit, and they are looking for where to diversify those operations around the world. But also, we like to think a little bit positively is that climate is opening new areas where their crops can, thrive, and also markets are developing where their crops are in demand. So we also help them figure out how to enter new markets with confidence and the regions where they need to go. Um, Also very important, we monitor those grower networks over time. Because effectively, climate is changing, but it also is very volatile. So we help them also understand what's happening so that they can deploy agronomic practices effectively. But yeah, in a nutshell, that's what we do. We help companies discover where to go around the world.
Yeah, okay, that's super interesting. So, I mean, tell me a little bit about your background in geoinformation science and Earth observation, and how did that lead you to building this platform? How did, margins, how did that background help support this margins?
So I got into remote sensing because I really like looking at things from above. And along my journey, I stumbled upon agriculture, which I think was the complete opposite. There was a lot of subjectivity on everything that happens around the grower. And what we discovered at some point was that the information and the support that growers get is very local. Like your agronomist will be probably an hour away from you, and we were thinking, climate is changing, markets are changing. Maybe growers need to work with advisors that might be a little bit further away. Maybe a grower in Spain needs to be growing with an advisor from Australia. So we started working on that concept. And ultimately, I think one of the best pieces of advice we've had was follow the money. I think in agriculture, there is a lot of areas where you can solve problems, but are they urgent enough that people are going to pay for it? So we ended up narrowing down on this domain of variety management and crop suitability, which is quite a niche, but it's a very good fit for us, and the remote sensing background plays a big role. As you can see, we use a lot of remote sensing and geospatial data to do what we do.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And so, I mean, what was the moment that kind of stopped it from being just a concept and really, wanting to solve this problem and make a company out of it?
I mean, the story is, I don't know if it's unconventional, but it was our story. So we had this idea for a while, and I decided to quit my job and throw myself at the problem. And we spent about a year validating the problem. Like we spent time in Iowa, in California, in the Philippines, in India, in Europe. We wanted to know, is this problem real? And all the feedback we were getting was like, yeah, yeah, this is a big problem. Yeah, yeah, this is cool. Yeah, 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 we, are interested. But then as we were like going further and further, we were also bootstrapped, and, like we were obviously focused on the business. We were not getting that moment where it would change immediately until it did. So we just kept a very open mind. We joined the program in New Zealand with Farmers to Founders, which helped us narrow down a lot and be very constrained, which I'm a big fan of constraints. And ultimately, through there, we understood this niche of variety management, and it took two calls to be extremely obvious that that's where we had to go, because people were not saying, "Oh, that's cool, let's chat." They were like, "Where do I sign up? How much does it cost?" So it was like probably no joke, but like over 500 conversations, meetings in person. It took two, and it became extremely clear. There was no doubt about it. So yeah, it was definitely a journey, but we felt it the moment people asked for how much, really.
Mm. Yeah, really interesting. And so I guess kind of diving into that sort of problem space, you've said your headline is production regions are being redrawn. What do you mean by that, and why now? And why do those types of customers that you said care about this?
Yeah. I mean, I think you just need to look at the news and you see how constantly there is, you know, headlines about this is the worst season for potatoes in Europe, or wine regions in northern Spain are struggling to keep up. And what we see is climate change has been a slowly shifting force, but volatility is affecting a lot these crops that have been relatively stable. Now they get these, heat waves, massive amounts of rain, and that's now forced those crops that have been very comfortable to really struggle and figure out where they need to go.
Mm,
That's one thing. The other thing is the demand, or the consumer is demanding products in different parts of the world. So these companies are now like entering markets that they had never entered before. So for them, it's also like climatically, you might have been growing pistachios in California for the past 40 years. But now if you want to grow pistachios in Southern Europe, what does that look like? What are the climate complexities you're going to have to face?
mm,
So yeah, that's what we mean with climate is changing, or the production regions are being redrawn. And it's like new opportunities are being open while some others are closing. Yeah.
yeah, really interesting. And so, I mean, through our discussions, you point, and in the communications you do, you point to a real example, a club variety where a single country decision risks nearly 1.9 million. So firstly, can you talk me through what club varieties actually are here, and then what happened
Yeah.
in this example?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm slowly becoming more familiar with the concept of club varieties, or variety managers. So effectively, these companies are like Adidas, they designed a apple or a pear or a berry. They also produce that berry either locally or in different regions around the world. And thirdly, they commercialize that product to the consumer. They find distribution channels. Those varieties have a license, so growers that are selected to grow that variety need to pay some royalties over time to these growers, to the variety managers, sorry. And it's a model that works really well because growers are extremely happy to have a variety that they know is going to have demand. Because that's one of the biggest problems for growers. You can produce almost anything, but if you cannot sell it to anybody, that's a big problem. These companies effectively guarantee you a price per kilo of a premium product that they are going to help you distribute. So typically there's also the packing and the distribution side of the business.
Mm,
So, yeah, these companies, variety management companies, they come in different shapes and forms. Some they just like develop the variety and sell the license. Some are like Cespri. They are like end-to-end integrated, where they have the varieties, they have the growers, they have the brand, they have the pack, the distribution, etc., etc., etc. So that's how it works. The club variety concept. And this specific case that you mentioned was sort of our aha moment. As effectively, we had built this model that was really, really good at identifying identical growing regions around the world.
mm,
And we had this partner that had a new variety of pears that was very unique, specifically on the color of the pear that was bright red. So they had gone to the traditional pear growing regions around the world, and it's a long process. You go through quarantine. You need to put that plant material through a process of quarantine in the regions where you go. Then you get it into the how you call it, the nurseries. It takes a couple years, and then you plant the tree or graft the tree, and it takes a few years. So it's a long process. And after the end of that process, they found out that some of those regions where they had sent those new varieties were just too hot. And because of that, the red color was not developing. That means that grower is not gonna be able to sell that pear. That means the variety manager is not gonna get any royalties.
mm,
So we came in, unfortunately, a bit too late into their journey because this had happened already a few years ago, but they had built their new strategy and they compared that strategy with our model. And
Mm.
our model effectively pointed out the regions where they were now going to go.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
effectively, the idea of, finding the areas where varieties perform is not new.
Mm.
It's just very slow, very expensive, and often it relies on anecdotal evidence. We provide all of the data that makes these companies that invest millions of euros on each new growing region to go with a much, much higher degree of confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. So let's kind of build into the kind of, margins matches regions anywhere in the world by climate similarity. So if you can just tell us, I guess, in plain terms, how does that actually work?
Yeah, yeah. So the way it works has very two distinct phases. Phase number one is you tell us where you have an operation that you find to be the best. We will then drill down onto that region almost like a cake, and we will look at every layer that defines that region from a climatic perspective. You know, what's the maximum temperature through these specific months? What's the amount of, growing degree days? What's the intensity of the sun? But also much more specific things like what's the delta between the average night temperature and day temperature? Because a lot of those things for those varieties, those little rules is what defines, is this apple gonna be crispy or not? That's what we do. We first drill onto that climatic cake to get an idea of what we're looking at. And then we find, the model is very, very good at finding what other parts of the world have those same conditions. And then what we do is we pull back the climatic data. Normally we only do 11 years, but we could do up to 25 years of data. And we look at all sorts of variables and compare them against the pattern of the reference growing region. So ultimately, we know how the temperature looks like over time for the reference region. And then we compare that against all of the other regions of the world that we have identified to match. And we build this rule set, which is really cool. The rule set effectively tells you, does this zone or is this area within the range or outside the range? And then when you do that across billions of data points, you end up with a score, which is a similarity score, which tells you this region is 85% similar to your reference. Over the past 11 years, this is how it developed. And over the past 11 years, these are the variables that might give you some trouble. And for those companies, that's just absolute gold because effectively, often almost anything can be managed if you know what you need to manage. So if it's about, okay, it's gonna be too cold, all right, then we need to deploy this variety, or we
Mm.
need to set up this agronomic management practice. But
Yeah.
that's how it works effectively.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. And so, I mean, how hard is this to do this? Turning global climate and sort of Earth observation data into something these types of customers can actually act on. Like, is this difficult?
I mean, I think what's difficult is to gain the trust of these
Mm.
companies, you know? And I think what makes it extra difficult is that these companies internally have some sort of logic for how to do this. We're not coming in and telling Cespri, hey, you should be going to Italy. They are already in Italy. They've already been doing that for some time. But we need to build trust
Mm.
on what is the information that is going to back us up opening new regions that you might have not discovered in the past. That's the most difficult part. Once we get to show them what we can do, typically the conversation changes really fast because they see we've built a pretty generic model.
Mm.
If very simply, that makes them make decisions, which for us that's really important because for us uncovering those new growing regions around the world is step one of our business. Step two is we're going to monitor those growers that you have around the world so that we know what's happening to them so that you can manage them over time so that they can produce as good as possible.
Mm.
Both on the new regions that you've opened where you need to educate your growers, but also in the regions where you are, where, it's getting hotter or colder or, more humid. how do you manage that those growers continue to perform to the level that
Mm.
you expect as a company? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's difficult, but it's all about trust.
Yeah, so let's kind of unpack that a little bit more around trust. So what's been the hardest part of kind of getting these customers to trust, this global data tool?
I think honestly, sometimes it's difficult to get to the right person.
Mm,
It's a relatively tight-knit community. I think there's often a lot of companies looking at agriculture as a whole with very blanket statements about how their solutions are going to help them improve yield or lower the cost or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think for us, it's just been very difficult to get to the right person. That's again, not that I think obviously it's relevant, but the program of Farmers to Founders helped us partner with some people that have a really good network in New Zealand that allowed us to kind of get us the competitive advantage to get to where we would have taken a couple of years to get.
mm,
But once you get there and you show them the data, everything becomes a lot more straightforward.
mm. Yeah, interesting. And so I want to kind of now move the conversation into kind of your big vision and your ask. And so if you're thinking about where is margins in 3 years, who's relying on it? What does that look like?
Mhm. I mean, right now we've focused very much on this variety management world, simply because we believe these companies have an immediate incentive to work with us. We do what they need fast, reliably, and we expand on the information that they need to make those decisions. So that is sort of working. Long term, we believe that anybody who is buying agricultural produce around the world that has a supply chain that requires of buying potatoes on multiple countries or almonds on multiple countries or any other high value crop, they are gonna have to understand what is happening in those regions with their partners so that they can organize their own supply chain. But also more importantly, I always love to use this example about peanuts and Mars. So Mars is the biggest peanut buyer in the world. They source from a couple of regions, mostly in North America and in Latin America. Those regions have experienced some volatility. We have found that in Europe, Albania happens to have the exact same conditions of growing like some parts of Georgia, where they've been or have some of their strongest producers. So if I was Mars, I would like to start setting up things in Albania because I know that that's a way to diversify my supply chain. So we take it up a little bit broader to companies that have an incentive on finding those regions, not immediately because of the royalties, but because of the processing and because of the supply chains that they are responsible for. That's where we want to go. But I think also very important for us is the monitoring aspect of the business. Because as I said, finding those new regions is one part of the problem. Monitoring those regions so that the agronomy teams are able to kind of be with them 24/7 instead of being flying around the world, 10 out of the 12 months of the year. It's super, super important. Agronomic knowledge is very scarce. We help those companies sort of scale that team that they have without the need of sending them to Brazil and then to South Africa and then to India and then to New Zealand. It's kind of crazy, but that's how it works. So we believe the way forward is also involving in this monitoring aspect of the business.
Yeah, definitely. And so I want to just a couple of kind of quick questions before we sort of wrap up, and I've got sort of a final section for you. Um,
hmm
the one regional crop match that surprised you most, best advice you've had as a founder, and one thing the data revealed about farming that you didn't expect.
So we've played around with a lot of crops when we were testing our model, and normally we've guided ourselves by what's in demand that people are talking about. And we found about ube, which is this
Mm,
purple root that they grow mainly in an island in the Philippines called Bohol. That product is being starting to get really, really popular around the world. And What's happening is that Bohol itself doesn't have enough demand.
Mm.
What we found out was that Ivory Coast in Africa has very similar conditions to the ones in Bohol. And what is really interesting is that that region is the same region that is now suffering a lot because of the chocolate production over the past few years. It's been really challenged because of the climate. So what we thought was that's a beautiful case for a region where the production region is moving away because of
Mm.
climate, but a new production region is coming, or a new production region is moving in.
Mm.
And we thought that was like a really interesting example because the way we like to look at it is like growers are the beneficiary of our insights.
Mm.
They should receive new people that want to buy a new product that they happen to be perfectly suited for. So Ube from the Philippines to Ivory Coast would be the one that I like the most. Then advice as a founder, um, it's a weird one. You get a lot of advice, solicited and unsolicited. Sometimes you go on LinkedIn and it's a bit overwhelming because everybody's kind of like telling you what to do and how you should feel. I think the best advice I've got from people is just like follow the money and try not to die.
Yeah.
If you as a business focus on who is willing to pay for your service
Mm.
and you try to stay calm and not give up, typically leads to good results. And I think that's especially relevant in agriculture.
Mm.
Agriculture is very complex, has a lot of layers to it, and you need to stay long enough to be able to sift through all of those layers until you find the area where you match.
Mm.
That would be my best piece of advice. And then what was the third question?
One thing the data revealed about farming that you didn't expect.
And it's always been interesting. I think what we've been surprised, and it's gonna sound a bit strange to say that coming from us, but how well our model does.
Mm.
There is a company that has built their entire reputation on the microclimates they've chosen to produce blueberries. Blueberry problems they are a little bit of how they call it, a roulette. Sometimes you get some flavor, sometimes you get. And they said, look, we're gonna focus on these 10 regions. We're gonna produce this variety so that it's consistent. So what did we do? We looked for where one of those regions were and kind of asked the model find us the regions where they might be producing, and we were like on the money in 70% of the cases, and we found a few others. So that was really interesting to be like, wow, okay, like this model does a very good job at understanding the complexities that come to grow a specific variety. And that was, I think, also still surprises every day how relatively accurate the model is.
So before we wrap, what's your one ask of anyone watching this and where should they go?
So we have been bootstrapped for now 2 years. We've closed our first meaningful commercial partners, and now we are looking to shift gears and be quite more aggressive. So the two asks that we have is anybody who is in a situation where their company is looking to diversify into new region, or they have a new variety that they are struggling with and they look for, how to monitor their current growers, contact us because I think we immediately have a solution that we can help you with and we can add value to you right away. So follow the money. And second is, yeah, we're now actually starting to do our first fundraise. We are a very, very small team right now. We are looking to grow up to 5 people, and we're looking for those early investors that not so much put the money, but also helps us connect with the right people in the industry. I think specifically in the world of FMCGs, it's really interesting. So investors that have strong connections to that space will be very valuable. But yeah, that would be our two asks, is like any client that listens to what we say, that thinks that we resonate, contact us, is Jorge, Jorge, at margins.farm. And we will get back to you for sure. And investors, yeah, same email. We have a pitch deck ready. We have some of our new, clients backing up our traction. So we are excited to talk to you as well. All right. So yeah, the best way to contact us is via email. It's pretty easy. It's Jorge as Jorge at margins.farm. Our website is also margins.farm. There's a contact form. You can reach out there. I'm also on LinkedIn, but my name is too common, so it's probably better chances if you send me a contact form, and I'll reach out like that. That's it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jorge. It's been so great chatting to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sky. Much appreciated.